5 minutes. That was all it took for Caleb Ross to wipe out 7 years of marriage. He didn't scream. He didn't throw things. He simply looked at the woman who had worked 3 jobs to put him through medical school and said, "You don't fit where I'm going." He handed her divorce papers in a diner on 4th Street, unaware that a letter was currently sitting in a mailbox in Greenwich, Connecticut, with Madeline's name on it. A letter that would reveal she wasn't just a broke waitress he was discarding. She was the sole heir to the Sterling Blackwood real estate dynasty, worth $1.3 billion. He thought he was taking out the trash. He had no idea he was walking away from the Queen. The fluorescent lights of Dino's Diner in downtown Chicago always hummed with a low, irritating buzz. But tonight, to Madeline Hart, it sounded like a scream. She sat across from Caleb, her hands tucked under her thighs to stop them from shaking. She was wearing her work uniform, a grease-stained polo shirt that smelled of old fryer oil and cheap coffee. Caleb, by contrast, looked pristine. He was wearing the charcoal grey suit she had bought him for his residency interviews, the one she had maxed out her last credit card to afford. He looked every inch the successful orthopedic surgeon he was about to become. "I don't understand," Madeline whispered. Her voice felt small, brittle. "We just paid off the last of your student loans last week. We were supposed to celebrate tonight." Caleb didn't reach for her hand. He took a sip of his sparkling water, his eyes scanning the room as if looking for someone more important to talk to. "That's exactly it, Maddie," Caleb said, his tone clinically detached. "The loans are paid, the struggle is over, and frankly, the struggle is all we had in common." He slid a manila envelope across the sticky table. It hit the salt shaker with a dull clink. "I've met someone," he continued, not even blinking. "Her name is Jessica Vane. Her father is the chief of surgery at Northwestern. She understands my world. She speaks the language of medicine, of gala dinners, of high society. Well, look at you, Maddie." He gestured vaguely at her uniform. "You're a waitress. You barely finished community college because you were too busy working to support me. I appreciate the sacrifice, I really do. But I'm a doctor now. I can't be seen with someone who smells like onions and despair. It's bad for my brand." Madeline felt the air leave her lungs. "Your brand?" "Caleb, I slept in our car for 3 weeks so you could afford your textbooks. I ate instant noodles for 4 years so you could eat steak. I'm your wife." "You were a utility," Caleb corrected, checking his watch. "A stepping stone. And now I've stepped up. Jessica and I are looking at a penthouse in the Gold Coast next week. I need this finalized quickly. I'm offering you a one-time settlement of $5,000. Take it, sign the papers, and disappear." $5,000? Madeline laughed, a wet, choking sound. "That doesn't even cover the credit card debt I took on for your suit." "Then sell the suit," Caleb said, standing up. He dropped a $20 bill on the table for his water. "But don't make a scene. You're embarrassing yourself. And Maddie? Don't try to fight this. Jessica's father has lawyers that would make your head spin. Just go back to your trailer park and find a nice truck driver. That's your speed." He walked out. He didn't look back. He walked out of the diner and into the rainy Chicago night, stepping into a waiting Uber Black. Madeline sat there for an hour. She didn't cry. She couldn't. She felt hollowed out, as if he had reached inside her chest and surgically removed her heart. She was 29 years old. She had no savings, no degree, a mountain of debt in her name, and an eviction notice on their studio apartment because she'd used the rent money to pay his board exam fees. She walked out of the diner into the pouring rain. She didn't have an umbrella. She walked 3 miles to the tiny, damp apartment they had shared. She packed her clothes into 2 garbage bags because Caleb had taken the suitcases. As she dragged the bags down the stairs, her phone buzzed. It was a text from the landlord, Mr. Henderson. "Rent is 3 days late. Locks change tomorrow at noon. Get out!" She sat on the curb, the rain soaking through her thin jacket. This was it. Rock bottom. She was homeless, divorced, and destitute. She looked up at the sky, letting the rain mix with the tears that finally started to fall. "What did I do wrong?" she whispered to the empty street. "I gave everything." She had no idea that 400 miles away, in a mahogany-paneled boardroom in New York City, a man named Benedict Cole was currently screaming into a telephone, looking for her. Benedict Cole was not a man who enjoyed incompetence. He was the senior partner at Sterling, Cole and Associates, a boutique law firm that handled only one client, the Sterling estate. He stood by the window of his office on the 40th floor, overlooking Central Park. The storm battering Chicago was just a grey haze on the horizon here. "What do you mean you can't find her?" Benedict barked at the private investigator on the speakerphone. "Harrison Sterling died 3 weeks ago. The probate period is ticking. We have a portfolio of assets including a penthouse on Park Avenue, a vineyard in Bordeaux, commercial blocks in Tokyo, and the majority stake in Blackwood Realty, sitting in limbo because you can't find his grandniece." "She's off the grid, Mr. Cole." The investigator, a grizzled man named Reynolds, crackled back. "Madeline Hart. Last known address in Chicago, but the landlord says he kicked her out yesterday. No car registered in her name. No current employment records. She quit her job at a diner called Dino's this morning. She's a ghost." Benedict rubbed his temples. Harrison Sterling had been a recluse. The man had owned half of Manhattan's skyline in the 1980s before retreating into solitude after his daughter, Madeline's mother, ran away with a mechanic. Harrison had cut them off, disowned them, and never spoken to them again. But on his deathbed, the old lion had a change of heart. Or perhaps a final act of spite against the board of directors who were circling his empire like vultures. "Leave it to the girl," Harrison had rasped, his hand gripping Benedict's wrist with surprising strength. "The waitress, the one who struggles. Don't give it to the charities, don't give it to the board. Give it to the blood. She knows the value of $1. Give her the empire." "Find her, Reynolds," Benedict ordered. "Check the homeless shelters. Check the women's aid centers. If Harrison's will isn't executed by the end of the month, the board of directors at Blackwood Realty will trigger the absorption clause and take control of the company. That girl is the only thing standing between a $1.3 billion legacy and a corporate chop shop. Find her." Madeline was not in a shelter. Not yet. She was sleeping in the back of a 2004 Honda Civic belonging to her only friend, Clara. Clara was a line cook at Dino's, a tough-as-nails woman in her 50s with hair dyed a violent shade of red. She found Madeline shivering on the curb and practically threw her into the car. "You're an idiot, Maddie," Clara said, handing her a thermos of soup. It was 2 days after the divorce papers. They were parked by the shores of Lake Michigan, watching the grey waves crash. "You should have stabbed him with a fork." "I loved him, Clara," Madeline said, her voice hoarse. She was wrapped in a blanket, staring out at the water. I thought we were a team." "He's a narcissist," Clara spat. "And you're a doormat. But you're a nice doormat. So, here's the plan. My cousin in Queens, New York, has a basement apartment. It's a rat hole, but she needs someone to watch her cats while she's in rehab. It's free rent. You take my car. I'm losing my license for that DUI anyway. And you drive east. Start over. Chicago is dead to you." "New York?" Madeline asked. "I can't afford gas to New York." Clara reached into her bra and pulled out a roll of cash. Tips from the last month. $300. It'll get you there. Go find a rich husband, or better yet, get a job where you don't have to serve ungrateful yuppies. Madeline took the money, tears welling up again. Why? Because when I was your age, no one helped me, Clara said, looking away. Now go, before I change my mind. The drive took 2 days. Madeline slept at rest stops, eating peanut butter sandwiches. She listened to the radio, hearing news about the booming stock market and the glittering lives of the rich, feeling like an alien on her own planet. When she arrived in Queens, the basement apartment turned out to be a damp room with one tiny window that looked out onto a brick wall. But it was dry. It was safe. For 2 weeks, Madeline navigated the chaos of New York. She applied for jobs as a hostess, a cleaner, a dog walker. She felt invisible. She was just another broken heart in a city of 8 million. Then, the letter came. It didn't come to the basement. It came to the old address in Chicago, was forwarded to Clara, who then mailed it to Queens in a larger envelope covered in frantic scribbles. Maddie, open this. Looks fancy. See. Madeline sat on the sagging mattress, opening the heavy cream envelope. The paper inside was thick, woven cotton. The letterhead was embossed in gold. Sterling, Cole and Associates, attorneys at law. Dear Ms. Hart, we have been attempting to contact you regarding the estate of your great-uncle, Harrison Sterling. It is imperative that you present yourself at our offices at 445 Park Avenue immediately regarding an inheritance matter. Please ask for Benedict Cole. Madeline frowned. Great-uncle Harrison? She vaguely remembered her mother mentioning a crazy uncle who lived in a castle, but she thought it was a fairy tale. Her mother had died when Madeline was 10, leaving her in the foster system until she met Caleb. She had no family. Inheritance, she muttered. Probably left me a box of old photos or a cat. She almost threw it away. She had a job interview at a Starbucks in 30 minutes. But something about the weight of the paper made her pause. She put on her only remaining nice outfit, a black dress she had bought for a funeral 3 years ago, and walked to the subway. She spent her last $2.75 on the fare to Manhattan. When she arrived at 445 Park Avenue, she felt dizzy. The building was a monolith of glass and steel. The doorman looked at her scuffed shoes with disdain. Delivery entrance is around the back, he sneered. I have a meeting, Madeline said, straightening her spine. She channeled every ounce of dignity she had left. With Benedict Cole, and if you make me late, I'll tell him it was your fault. The doorman blinked, surprised by the steel in her voice. He checked his clipboard. His eyes widened. Miss Hart, apologies. Please right this way. Private elevator. Madeline stepped into the elevator, her heart hammering against her ribs. She watched the numbers climb. 10, 20, 30, 40. The doors opened into a lobby that smelled of old money, leather, mahogany, and expensive scotch. A receptionist stood up immediately. Miss Hart, thank goodness. Mr. Cole is waiting. She was ushered into the corner office. Benedict Cole turned from the window. He was a tall man, silver-haired, with eyes that seemed to X-ray her soul. He looked her up and down, taking in the cheap dress, the tired eyes, the defiant chin. You look like him, Benedict said softly. Like who? Madeline asked, gripping her purse. Harrison. Benedict gestured to a chair. Please, sit down. We have a lot to cover. Madeline sat. Mr. Cole, look, if this is about a bill my uncle owed, I don't have any money. My ex-husband took everything. I have $11 in my pocket. Benedict smiled. It was a rare, genuine smile. No, Miss Hart, this is not about a bill. He opened a leather folder and slid a document toward her. It was a summary of assets. Your great-uncle, Harrison Sterling, passed away last month without a direct heir. His will was contested by his board of directors, but we have successfully authenticated his final codicil. He left everything to his sister's granddaughter. Okay, Madeline said, confused. So what did he leave? A house? In a manner of speaking, Benedict said, he left you the Sterling Trust. He began to list them. The Sterling Tower on Fifth Avenue, the Blackwood residential complex in San Francisco, the Villa d'Este in Lake Como, a diversified stock portfolio, and the controlling interest in Blackwood Realty. Madeline stared at him. The words were floating in the air, refusing to land. I don't understand. Benedict leaned forward. Miss Hart, the total valuation of the assets, after taxes, is approximately $1.3 billion. The room went silent. The only sound was the ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner. Bibillion? Madeline stammered. With a B? With a B, Benedict confirmed. You are now one of the wealthiest women in New York City. And frankly, considering the sharks on the Blackwood board who want to strip these assets, we have a lot of work to do. You can't just inherit this, Madeline. You have to rule it, or they will eat you alive. Madeline felt the room spin. She thought of Caleb. She thought of the diner. She thought of the $5,000 he had thrown at her. Does anyone else know? She whispered. No, Benedict said. To the world, the Sterling fortune is in probate limbo. We can keep it that way for a few weeks while we get you up to speed. Why? Madeline looked out the window at the sprawling city below. Somewhere out there, Caleb was shopping for penthouses with Jessica, laughing about the waitress he had left behind. A cold, hard resolve settled in her chest. The sadness evaporated, replaced by something much hotter. Because, Madeline said, looking Benedict in the eye, my ex-husband thinks I'm trash. I want to make sure that when he finally realizes who I am, it's too late for him to run. Benedict Cole's smile widened. He opened a drawer and pulled out a black American Express Centurion card. Then let's get to work, Ms. Hart. First order of business. Let's get you a wardrobe that doesn't scream Chicago Diner. The transformation was not a montage set to pop music. It was a demolition. For the first week, Madeline didn't step foot outside the Sterling Tower penthouse. The apartment was a sprawling, silent palace of marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a view of Manhattan usually reserved for gods. But Madeline didn't feel like a god. She felt like an imposter in a very expensive museum. Benedict Cole became her shadow, her teacher, and her drill sergeant. He arrived every morning at 6 a.m. with a stack of binders 3 inches thick. Asset liquidity, Benedict said, pacing in front of the fireplace while Madeline drank espresso she didn't know how to brew. Zoning laws in San Francisco. Tax shelters in the Caymans. Learn it, Madeline. If you don't understand what you own, Preston Gentry will steal it from you before the ink is dry on the title deeds. Preston Gentry? Madeline asked, rubbing her tired eyes. The man on the board? The viper on the board, Benedict corrected. He was your uncle's protégé until he tried to stage a coup 5 years ago. He thinks the Sterling Empire is his birthright. He believes the heir is a myth, or worse, incompetent. He has scheduled a vote of no confidence for the annual gala next month. If you are not ready to stand in that room and command respect, he will dissolve the trust and sell off the pieces. Madeline looked at the binder. Blackwood Realty. Quarterly projections. She thought of Caleb. She remembered the nights she had helped him memorize anatomy flashcards. She had learned every bone in the human body just to quiz him. She had the capacity to learn. She had just never been allowed to use it for herself. Tell me about Gentry, Madeleine said, her voice hardening. "What does he want?" "Power," Benedict said. "And the West Creek Medical Center project. It's the crown jewel of our current development. A massive, state-of-the-art medical complex in Chicago." Madeleine froze. Chicago. Yes, it's poised to be the premier orthopedic and trauma center in the Midwest. Gentry wants to privatize it, turn it into a cash cow for the elite. A strange, cold smile touched Madeleine's lips. "Orthopedic," she whispered. "Is there a list of prospective attending surgeons for this center?" Benedict raised an eyebrow. "I can get it." Get it. Over the next 2 weeks, Madeleine ceased to be the waitress from Dino's. She hired a speech coach to smooth out her frantic, apologetic way of speaking. She learned to stand still, to hold silence in a room, rather than filling it with nervous chatter. She cut her hair. The long, frizzy ponytail was replaced by a sharp, asymmetrical bob that framed her jawline like a helmet. She didn't just buy clothes, she bought armor. Tailored blazers from Milan, silk blouses that felt like water, heels that clicked against the marble with the sound of a closing gavel. But the hardest part wasn't the look. It was the mindset. One evening, while staring at the city lights, Benedict handed her a glass of wine. "You're still hunching," he observed gently. "I'm used to making myself small," Madeleine admitted, "so I don't get in people's way, so I don't get yelled at by customers, so Caleb doesn't feel threatened." "Caleb is a speck of dust," Benedict said. "You are a mountain. Mountains don't shrink for the hikers. You need to kill the waitress, Madeleine. She was a survival mechanism. She isn't needed here." Madeleine closed her eyes. She pictured the diner, the smell of grease, the look on Caleb's face when he handed her the divorce papers, the absolute certainty that she was nothing. She took a breath and opened her eyes. The fear was gone, replaced by a glacial calm. "The waitress is dead," she said. "Now, tell me about this gala." "The Gilded Gala," Benedict said, pleased. "Metropolitan Museum of Art, next Saturday. Every shark in real estate, finance, and medicine will be there. Preston Gentry will be there to announce the acquisition of the company. You are going to interrupt him." "And Caleb?" she asked. Benedict pulled a dossier from his briefcase. "Dr. Caleb Ross, recently engaged to Jessica Vane. Jessica's father is pushing to get Caleb named as the junior director of the new West Creek Medical Center. They are attending the gala as guests of the Vane family to network with the owners of the property." "They're coming to network with the owners," Madeleine repeated, swirling her wine. "They're coming to network with me. They don't know you're the owner. No one does. To the world, the Sterling Air is still a mystery. Tonight, you step into the light." Madeleine walked to the window, her reflection ghosting against the glass. She didn't look like Maddie anymore. She looked dangerous. "Get me the red dress," she said. The Metropolitan Museum of Art was transformed into a glittering cavern of gold and velvet. Waiters moved like spectres through the crowd of New York's elite, carrying trays of champagne that cost more than Madeleine used to make in a year. Caleb Ross adjusted his bow tie, checking his reflection in a glass display case containing an Egyptian artifact. He looked good. Wealth suited him. Or rather, the proximity to wealth suited him. "Stop fidgeting," Jessica Vane hissed, linking her arm through his. She was blonde, statuesque, and wore a silver dress that looked like chain mail. "Daddy says Preston Gentry is going to be near the Temple of Dendor Bar in 10 minutes. We need to make a good impression. If you get the West Creek position, we're set for life." "I know," Caleb said, scanning the room. I feel like everyone is watching me." "They aren't watching you, darling. You're nobody yet," Jessica said, with a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "But you will be. Just charm Gentry. Tell him about your innovative approach to spinal reconstruction. Rich old men love hearing about how you can fix their backs." Caleb nodded, swallowing his irritation. Jessica was harsh, but she was right. This was the big leagues. This was where he belonged. Far away from that cramped apartment in Chicago and the wife who smelled like French fries. He felt a momentary pang of guilt, a phantom itch, but he pushed it down. "I did what I had to do," he told himself. "Maddie would have drowned here. I cut her loose. It was mercy." "Ladies and gentlemen," a voice boomed over the speakers. The crowd quieted. At the top of the grand staircase stood a man with silver hair and a tuxedo that fit perfectly. "That's Benedict Cole," Jessica whispered reverently. "The Sterling family lawyer. He holds the keys to the kingdom." "Welcome to the Gilded Gala," Benedict announced. "Tonight we celebrate the future of real estate, and it is my distinct honor to finally put the rumors to rest. Many of you have asked about the future of the Sterling Empire and Blackwood Realty. Tonight, I introduce you to the chairwoman." A murmur went through the crowd. Preston Gentry, a thick-set man with a face like a bulldog, stood near the front, looking smug. He expected to be named. He straightened his jacket. "Please welcome," Benedict's voice rang out, "Ms. Madeline Sterling Hart." The top of the staircase remained empty for a heartbeat. Then she stepped out. She was wearing a gown of deep, blood-red silk that hugged every curve before pooling at her feet. It was backless, daring, and regal. Her dark hair was sharp, her lips painted a crimson that matched the dress. She wore diamonds at her throat that glittered like ice. She descended the stairs slowly. She didn't look at her feet. She looked straight ahead, her gaze sweeping over the crowd with terrifying confidence. Caleb dropped his champagne flute. It shattered on the stone floor, the sound echoing in the silence. Champagne splashed onto Jessica's silver hem. "You idiot!" Jessica hissed, jumping back. But Caleb couldn't hear her. He was paralyzed. He stared at the woman on the stairs. It was impossible. It was a hallucination. Maddie? No, it couldn't be. Maddie was soft. Maddie wore oversized t-shirts. Maddie had tired eyes and rough hands. This woman was a goddess. This woman looked like she could buy the museum and burn it down for sport. Madeline reached the bottom of the stairs. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. Benedict offered her his arm and she took it, her face a mask of serene indifference. "Who is that?" Jessica asked, staring. "She's stunning." Caleb's throat was dry. "I think—" "Don't be daft, you don't know her," Jessica snapped. "Come on, Gentry is moving toward her. We need to get in that circle." Jessica dragged Caleb forward. He felt like he was moving in a nightmare. As they approached the inner circle, he heard Madeline speaking. Her voice was lower, smoother, stripped of the Midwestern twang he remembered. "Mr. Gentry," Madeline was saying. She held a glass of water, looking at the man who wanted to steal her company. "Benedict tells me you've been very active during the transition." Preston Gentry looked flustered. He had expected a confused girl he could bully. He was looking at a predator. "Ms. Hart, the board, we just wanted to ensure stability." "Stability is ensured," Madeline said coolly. "I've reviewed the financials for the West Creek project. I have some notes." "Notes?" Gentry blinked. "Yes. We'll discuss them Monday at 8 a.m. Don't be late." She dismissed him with a turn of her head. And then she turned and looked directly at Caleb. The air left the room for him. He stood there, 5 feet away, his heart hammering against his ribs. He waited for her to scream. He waited for her to cry. He waited for her to point a finger and tell everyone what he had done. Madeline's eyes locked onto his. They were dark, unreadable pools. She looked at him for 3 long seconds. Then her gaze slid to Jessica, then back to Benedict. "Who are these people, Benedict?" she asked. Her tone was polite, distant, as if she were asking about a piece of furniture. Caleb felt like he had been punched. She didn't recognize him? Or worse, did she not care? "This is Dr. Caleb Ross," Benedict said, playing along perfectly. "And Ms. Jessica Vane. They are interested in the surgical suites at West Creek." Madeline tilted her head slightly. "Dr. Ross, a pleasure." She extended a hand, a gloved hand. Caleb took it. It was warm. His hand was shaking. Madeline, is it really you?" Jessica looked between them, confused. "You know each other?" Madeline smiled. It was a terrifying smile. It didn't reach her eyes. "I have a common face, I'm told," Madeline said smoothly. "I assume I remind you of someone?" Caleb stared at her. He searched for the Maddie he knew, the Maddie who begged him to stay, the Maddie who cried in the diner. She wasn't there. "My ex-wife," Caleb whispered, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. "You look exactly like my ex-wife." The circle of socialites around them went quiet. This was delicious gossip. Madeline laughed. It was a light, airy sound. "Your ex-wife? Well, I hope she was treated better than she dressed if she looked like me." "I'm afraid I've never been to Chicago, Dr. Ross. I've spent the last few wars in seclusion in Europe." She lied with such ease, such grace, that Caleb doubted his own sanity. Maybe it wasn't her. Maybe he was having a breakdown. But the eyes... "Now, if you'll excuse me," Madeline said, withdrawing her hand. "I have a company to run. Mr. Gentry, a word about the Tokyo acquisition?" She turned her back on him. She turned her back on Caleb Ross, just as he had turned his back on her in the diner. As she walked away, the red silk trailing behind her, Caleb felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. "God," Jessica whispered, staring after her. "She's intimidating. And she owns the West Creek project? Caleb, you have to get in good with her. Forget the ex-wife comment, you weirdo. Fix it." Caleb watched Madeline disappear into the crowd. "I have to talk to her," he muttered. "Not now." Jessica grabbed his arm. "Wait until the auction. They're auctioning off the naming rights for the hospital wing. Daddy gave us a budget. We're going to buy it and impress her." Madeline stood on the balcony overlooking the great hall, her hands gripping the railing until her knuckles were white. Benedict appeared beside her. "You did well," he murmured. "I almost threw up," Madeline confessed, her voice shaking slightly. Did he believe it? He doesn't know what to believe. Men like Caleb are arrogant. They can't conceive that the woman they discarded could rise so high. He thinks his Maddie is suffering in a gutter. This version of you doesn't fit his narrative. "He's going to bid on the hospital wing naming rights," Madeline said, watching Caleb down a scotch at the bar below. "Yes. The Vane family wants the Vane-Ross wing to cement his status." Madeline turned to Benedict, the shaking in her hands stopping. The cold resolve returned. "Let him bid," she said. "Let him think he's winning. And then, I want you to crush him." "How?" Benedict asked, intrigued. "Is there a limit on anonymous bids?" "No." "Good." Madeline smoothed her dress. "He spent 7 years using my money to build his ego. Tonight I'm going to use my money to buy his dream and lock him out of it." The grand hall of the Metropolitan Museum had settled into a hush of anticipation. The dinner plates had been cleared, the string quartet had ceased playing, and the auctioneer, a man with a voice like polished brass, stepped up to the podium. And now, the auctioneer announced, adjusting his spectacles, the item many of you have been waiting for. Lot 44, the naming rights to the new trauma wing at the upcoming West Creek Medical Center in Chicago. This is a chance to etch your legacy into the bedrock of modern medicine. Caleb Ross sat up straighter. He smoothed his tuxedo jacket, feeling the sweat prickling at his collar. Beside him, Jessica Vane checked her phone, typing a frantic message to her father. "Daddy says the ceiling is $2 million, Jessica whispered, not looking up. "He says if you can get it for under 1.5, he'll buy you a Porsche for the commute." "I can do this," Caleb said, mostly to himself. "It's just bidding. I'm a surgeon. I make split-second decisions. Start the bidding at $500,000, the auctioneer called out. Caleb's paddle shot up. 104. "Thank you, sir," the room murmured. It was an aggressive opening. Caleb felt a surge of adrenaline. He looked around the room, catching eyes, feeling important. For the first time in his life, he wasn't the scholarship kid or the husband of a waitress. He was a player. 600,000, a voice called from the back. It was a hedge fund manager Caleb recognized from CNBC. 700, Caleb counted immediately. 800. $1 million, Caleb said, his voice cracking slightly. The room went silent. $1 million. It was a serious number. Jessica squeezed his thigh approval. "Good," she hissed. "Show them strength." $1 million going once, the auctioneer chanted. Going twice, $2 million. The voice didn't come from the floor. It came from the front row, where the VIPs sat. Benedict Cole lowered his paddle calmly. Caleb froze. He looked at Jessica. Her face had gone pale. "That's the Sterling lawyer," she whispered. "Why is he bidding? They own the building." "He's bidding for a proxy," Caleb realized, his stomach churning. "Someone who wants to remain anonymous." "Bid again," Jessica commanded. "Daddy said 2 million was the cap, but we can stretch. We need this, Caleb. If the wing is named after you, the board can't deny you the directorship." Caleb's hand shook as he raised the paddle. 2.1 million. He felt sick. That was money he didn't have. That was money Jessica's father would have to wire in the morning. Benedict Cole didn't even look back. He simply raised a finger. $3 million, the auctioneer announced. The crowd gasped. Whispers erupted like wildfire. Caleb stared at the back of Benedict's head. Who was doing this? Who had $3 million to throw around just to block him? "Caleb," Jessica hissed. "Do something." I can't," Caleb stammered. $3 million is insane. Your father will kill me." "My father hates losers more than he hates spending money," Jessica snapped. "Bid." Caleb raised the paddle, his arm feeling like lead. 3.1. The silence stretched. The auctioneer looked at Benedict. Benedict didn't move immediately. He seemed to be waiting for a signal. Up on the balcony, hidden in the shadows of a limestone pillar, Madeline watched. She held a small device in her hand, connected to an earpiece Benedict was wearing. She looked down at Caleb. She saw the sweat shining on his forehead. She saw the panic in his eyes. She saw the way Jessica was digging her nails into his arm. He looked small. "Finish it," Madeline whispered into her comms device. Benedict Cole raised his paddle. $5 million, the auctioneer bellowed. The room exploded. $5 million for a hospital wing. It was unheard of. Caleb dropped his paddle. It clattered to the floor, echoing the sound of the champagne glass he had broken earlier. He slumped in his chair, defeated. There was no way to compete with that. He had lost. "Sold," the auctioneer slammed the gavel. "To the Sterling Trust. And I am told the anonymous donor wishes to announce the name of the wing immediately." The auctioneer unfolded a slip of paper that a runner had just handed him. "The new wing will be named the Clara and Hart Trauma Center." Caleb frowned, confusion cutting through his misery. "Hart? Who cares?" Jessica spat, grabbing her clutch. "You lost. Let's go. I need to call my father and explain why his future son-in-law got rolled over by a lawyer." Caleb stood up, his legs wobbly. Hart. That was Maddie's maiden name. And Clara. That was the name of that trashy cook she worked with. "No," he thought, shaking his head. "It's a coincidence. Hart is a common name. And Clara it's just a name." But as he walked out of the museum, passing the grand staircase, he looked up. For a split second, he saw a flash of red silk on the balcony. The woman was watching him, and in that moment, the coincidence felt like a noose tightening around his neck. Monday morning in Manhattan was a battlefield, and the Sterling Tower was its fortress. The 50th floor was buzzing with activity. Secretaries were sprinting with coffee, analysts were shouting into phones, and in the center of it all, inside the glass-walled boardroom, Madeline Sterling Hart was dismantling Preston Gentry. "You authorized a 15% increase in management fees for the San Francisco properties," Madeline said, tossing a file onto the mahogany table, "while occupancy is down 4%. Preston Gentry, usually the loudest man in the room, was sweating. He loosened his tie. "Ms. Hart, you have to understand, the market is fluctuating. We needed to incentivize the property managers." "You incentivized them to do less work for more money," Madeline said, her voice sharp as a scalpel. "I'm reversing the hike, and I'm auditing your expense accounts for the last 3 years. If I find a single-steak dinner that wasn't strictly business, Preston, I'm firing you for cause. Do we understand each other?" The board members around the table stared at her. 2 weeks ago they didn't know she existed. Now they were terrified of her. "Understood," Preston mumbled, looking at his hands. "Good. Get out. Meeting adjourned." As the board members filed out, looking like schoolboys who had just been scolded, Benedict entered. He looked amused. "You have a knack for terror, Madeline. Harrison would have been proud." Madeline sank into her leather chair, exhaling a long breath. "I'm shaking, Benedict. I feel like I'm acting in a play, and I'm about to forget my lines." "You're not acting," Benedict said, placing a coffee in front of her. "You're leading. And speaking of acting, your 11 a.m. is here." Madeline stiffened. She checked her watch. 10:55 a.m. "Dr. Ross?" "Yes, he's in the waiting room. He's been there for 20 minutes. He arrived early. He seems agitated." Madeline stood up and walked to the window. She looked out at the skyline, grounding herself. She remembered the rain in Chicago. She remembered the eviction notice. She remembered the feeling of being discarded like trash. "Let him wait 10 more minutes," Madeline said. "Let him sweat." In the outer reception area, Caleb Ross was indeed sweating. The offices of Blackwood Realty were intimidating. Everything was glass, chrome, and silence. He felt out of place in his suit, which suddenly felt cheap compared to the Italian wool the interns were wearing. He was here to beg. After the disaster at the auction, Jessica's father had given him an ultimatum. Get a meeting with the owner, fix this, secure your position at West Creek, or don't bother coming to the wedding rehearsal. So here he was, trying to meet the mysterious Madeline Sterling Hart. The name Hart kept gnawing at him. He had spent the entire weekend stalking the internet, looking for photos of her. There were none. Just a press release from Saturday stating she had assumed control of the company. "Dr. Ross?" He jumped. The receptionist, a young woman with a headset, smiled professionally. "Ms. Hart will see you now." Caleb stood up, smoothing his tie. He walked down the long corridor, his footsteps swallowed by the plush carpet. The double doors at the end opened automatically. He stepped inside. The office was massive. A fireplace crackled on one wall. A Picasso hung on the other. And behind a desk, the size of a small car, sat the woman in the red dress. Today, she wasn't wearing red. She was wearing a sharp white power suit that made her look like an ice sculpture. She was reading a document and didn't look up when he entered. "Sit," she said. Caleb sat. The chair was lower than hers, forcing him to look up. A classic power move. "Ms. Sterling Hart," Caleb began, using his best doctor voice, authoritative yet charming. "Thank you for seeing me. I wanted to apologize for any confusion at the gala on Saturday." Madeline slowly lowered the document. She took off her reading glasses and folded them. She looked at him. "Confusion," she repeated. "I wasn't confused, Dr. Ross. You seemed to be the one struggling." "Yes, well," Caleb chuckled nervously. "You bear a striking resemblance to someone I used to know. It threw me off. But I'm here to talk about West Creek. I understand you have concerns about the surgical staffing." "I do," Madeline said. She picked up a file. "I've been reviewing your CV. You're a talented surgeon, Caleb. Top of your residency class. Excellent board scores." "Thank you," Caleb beamed. This was familiar territory. He was good on paper. "But," Madeline continued, her eyes hardening, "I have concerns about your character." Caleb blinked. "My character?" "West Creek is a facility built on care," Madeline said, leaning forward. "On empathy. I need leaders who understand sacrifice, leaders who value people over status." "I assure you," Caleb said, leaning in earnestly, "I have dedicated my life to helping people. I sacrificed everything to become a doctor." "Did you?" Madeline asked softly. "Or did someone else sacrifice for you?" The air in the room went cold. Caleb felt a shiver crawl up his spine. The way she said it, the cadence, it was so familiar. I don't understand," Caleb whispered. Madeline opened her desk drawer. She pulled out a small, crumpled piece of paper and slid it across the polished wood. Caleb looked at it. It was a check, a personal check for $5,000. The date was from 3 weeks ago. The memo line read, "Settlement." Caleb's breath hitched in his throat. He stared at the check. He recognized his own handwriting. He looked up at the woman in the white suit. Really looked at her. He looked past the expensive haircut, past the makeup, past the diamonds. He looked at her eyes. They were brown, flecked with gold. The same eyes that had looked at him with adoration for 7 years. "Maddie?" he choked out. Madeline didn't blink. She didn't smile. "Hello, Caleb." Caleb shot up from his chair as if he had been electrocuted. He stumbled back, knocking the chair over. "No," he said, shaking his head. "No, this is a joke. You're a waitress. You're broke. I left you at Dino's." "You did," Madeline said calmly. "You left me with $5,000 and a broken heart. You told me I didn't fit where you were going. You told me to find a truck driver." She stood up. She didn't look small anymore. She looked 10 feet tall. "Well, Caleb, do I fit now?" Caleb's mind was fracturing. The cognitive dissonance was too strong. "But how? The name? Sterling." "My great-uncle," Madeline explained, walking around the desk. "He died. I inherited everything. The buildings, the land, the billions, and the hospital you are so desperate to rule." Caleb stared at her, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. The realization hit him like a freight train. The woman he had discarded to climb the ladder owned the ladder. "Maddie," he gasped, a desperate smile forming on his face. He took a step toward her. "Maddie, oh my God, this is incredible. Why didn't you tell me? I would have—" "You would have what?" Madeline stopped him with a raised hand. "Stayed?" "Yes. I mean, no, not just for the money, but—" Caleb ran a hand through his hair, his brain scrambling to rewrite history. "Baby, I was stressed. The residency, the pressure. I didn't mean those things I said. I was pushing you away because I thought I wasn't good enough for you. I was trying to protect you." It was a pathetic lie. They both knew it. Madeline laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "You really are a narcissist, aren't you?" she said. "You think you can spin this? You think you can charm your way back in because now I'm wearing Chanel?" "We're married," Caleb said, grasping at straws. "Technically, the papers aren't final. We are still husband and wife. This money, half of this is mine. It's marital property." Madeline signaled to the corner of the room. Benedict Cole stepped out from the shadows where he had been standing quietly. "Actually, Dr. Ross," Benedict said smoothly, "inheritance is rarely considered marital property, especially when the benefactor specifically excludes the spouse in the trust language. And furthermore, you signed a separation agreement 3 weeks ago, accepting the $5,000 as a full and final settlement of all financial claims. I have the document right here." Caleb paled. He looked at Benedict, then back at Madeline. "You trapped me," Caleb whispered. "No, Caleb," Madeline said, stepping closer until she was inches from his face. She could smell his expensive cologne, the one she had bought him for his birthday. "You trapped yourself. You showed me exactly who you are when you thought I had nothing. And now that I have everything, I know exactly what you're worth." She walked back to her desk and pressed a button on the intercom. "Security, please escort Dr. Ross out of the building." "Wait!" Caleb cried, panic setting in. "Maddie, please! The West Creek job! Jessica's father! If I don't get this, they'll cut me off. I'll lose the fellowship. I'll lose everything." "You have your degree," Madeline said coldly, sitting back down and picking up her pen. "You have your $5,000. You're a smart man, Caleb. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Isn't that what you told me to do?" 2 large security guards entered the room. They grabbed Caleb by the arms. "Maddie, you can't do this! I made you!" Caleb screamed as they dragged him backward. "I'm the only reason you're anything. Maddie!" The doors shut, cutting off his screams. Silence returned to the office. Madeline sat there for a long moment, staring at the closed doors. Her hand was trembling slightly. Benedict walked over and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Are you all right?" Madeline looked up. A single tear escaped, running down her cheek. She wiped it away furiously. "I thought it would feel better," she admitted. "I thought revenge would feel like victory. It just feels sad. He was my whole world, Benedict, and he was just empty. He was a bad investment," Benedict said gently. "You cut your losses. Now you have a portfolio to manage." Madeline nodded. She took a deep breath, straightening her blazer. "You're right. What's next on the agenda?" "Preston Gentry isn't done," Benedict warned. "He's calling for an emergency shareholder vote. He's found a loophole in the bylaws regarding your experience. He's going to try to prove you are incompetent to lead because of your background." Madeline's eyes flashed. The sadness evaporated, replaced by the steel that was quickly becoming her trademark. "He wants to put me on trial?" she asked, essentially. "Fine," Madeline said, standing up. "Let him try. If he wants to talk about my background, I'll show him exactly what a waitress from Chicago can do when she's cornered. Prepare the jet, Benedict. We're going to San Francisco. I need to meet the Blackwood tenants personally. Why? Because, Madeline smiled, Gentry thinks real estate is about buildings. I know it's about people, and I'm going to build an army. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was packed with 500 anxious shareholders. Preston Gentry had chosen this stage for his final act, the public execution of Madeline's career. He sat on the elevated dais, flanked by his loyalists, including Jessica's father, Dr. Lawrence Vane. "Ladies and gentlemen," Gentry announced, his voice oozing false concern, "we face a crisis. The Sterling legacy is in the hands of an amateur." A giant screen behind him flickered to life, displaying a grainy photo of Madeline in her pink diner uniform, wiping a table. "This was taken 3 weeks ago," Gentry sneered. Ms. Hart was not analyzing markets. She was serving grilled cheese. "Is this who you want negotiating with Tokyo? I move for a vote of no confidence to remove her immediately." Madeline stood up. She didn't walk to the podium. She walked to the center of the stage, forcing the room to focus on her. "You're right, Preston," Madeline's voice rang out clear. "I was a waitress. And do you know what you learn when you're the help? You learn to listen. People say things in front of invisible staff that they would never say in a boardroom." She signaled Benedict, who distributed a stack of documents to the front row. "You claim I'm incompetent, but while you were dining at Le Bernardin, I was visiting our San Francisco properties. My forensic accountants found something interesting. A shell company called Vanguard Construction has been billing us triple rates for repairs that never happen." Madeline clicked a remote. The diner photo vanished, replaced by a corporate registration document projected on the screen. Owner, Lawrence Vane. Dr. Vane froze in the front row. Beside him, Jessica looked ready to faint. "You and Dr. Vane have been siphoning millions from the Sterling Trust to fund your lifestyles," Madeline declared. "It's not incompetence sinking this stock, Preston. It's theft." "Lies!" Gentry shouted, standing up. "These are forged." "They are certified by the SEC," Benedict Cole stated calmly from his seat. "The FBI is currently executing a search warrant at your office." Pandemonium erupted. As security blocked Dr. Vane's exit, Madeline turned to the microphone. "I move for the immediate termination of Preston Gentry and Lawrence Vane for cause. All in favor?" 500 hands shot into the air. As security dragged a screaming Gentry away, Madeline stood alone at the center of the chaos, finally breathing free. The waitress had just cleaned house. 3 months later, the Chicago winter howled outside a cramped, dingy apartment. Caleb Ross sat on a sagging futon, looking gaunt. The engagement to Jessica had ended minutes after her father's indictment. The Vane fortune was frozen, his reputation was ruined, and Madeline had blacklisted him from every major hospital in the state. He was now working urgent care shifts at a strip mall. On the television, a news anchor beamed. Billionaire Madeline Sterling Hart today opened the Clara and Hart Trauma Center, the most advanced facility in the Midwest. Caleb watched as Madeline cut the red ribbon, looking radiant and powerful. A reporter thrust a microphone at her. "Miss Hart, what is the secret to your success?" Madeline looked directly into the camera. "You have to know your own worth. And sometimes, to fly, you have to lose the dead weight." Caleb turned off the TV, plunging the room into darkness. On his coffee table sat a crumpled piece of paper, the uncashed settlement check for $5,000. It was all he had left. He realized then that he hadn't just lost a fortune. He had traded the only woman who ever loved him for a reflection that turned out to be hollow. He buried his face in his hands and wept. Miles above him, in a private jet soaring toward the horizon, Madeline clinked a champagne glass with Benedict and Clara. She didn't look back. She had a world to build. And that is the story of Madeline Hart, the woman who was discarded like yesterday's news only to buy the printing press. It's a powerful reminder that we should never let others define our value. Caleb Ross looked at a diamond and saw a rock simply because he didn't know how to appraise it. He chased the illusion of status and lost the reality of love, paying the ultimate price for his arrogance. Madeline's journey from the diner to the boardroom proves that your current circumstances do not dictate your future. Resilience, intelligence, and a little bit of karma can turn the tables when you least expect it. If you enjoyed this story of sweet revenge and justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. What would you have done if you were Madeline? Would you have forgiven Caleb, or did he get exactly what he deserved? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.